balmy crickets. That's what we got, balmy crickets. And it's a shame. You know it's a shame. We have it in our hands to do this. We have it in our responsibility to do this. Throw off this nonsense. It becomes this insanity. People don't recognize that that's this insanity that we hear about and see about. It really was up to the people to contain. And we just haven't been doing it. So I'm here every week trying to get us to just find where we can jump in and do something. Because of the hour shift, those of you that are still now hearing me and looking to hear the broadcast and realize we're on an hour late, we lost a lot of light today for some reason. The sun kind of moved along in the sky real quick, if you noticed. But we're here now, saying the same thing. Yeah, it's people that are going to have to step up to this, and the foot race is still on. And I can just tell you, and I can't tell you about it because it's all what happens in the background. I can tell you when you step up in a thing that you think you have knowledge in, and you hold very close to what the truth is on the law, especially the law. That's what's going to save you here. The objective basis, notwithstanding everybody else violating it. Finding out what's already written, so it's not an opinion. And holding to that, holding to those standards. I was listening because of the extra hour. I was able to listen to Ron a little bit better earlier. And I threw some things in the UCY chat as to how he could take the exact facts that he has with his condition, where they sent the cops out on him, and turn that with what he already knows. Everybody knows this stuff. Just turn out with what the facts is that he knows on his own case. Turn them into utilizing the law, the objective basis that's being ignored, against them as fiduciary obligations violated, whether by omission or commission. And as I think about it, I'm completely off of where I was going to start, but I want to address this because I want to tell you that the crickets, those that stop being the crickets, stop thinking it's real comfortable, stop making the excuse that it's comfortable. Really have a thing to do that is doable, and I hate the term, but it's doable. It's actionable when placed properly. And we've been totally removed from what more proper is. That I'm telling you, when you start to apply, I talk to you, even though I don't reference too many things directly, I talk to you of what we're doing that works. I don't just talk to you about ideas and hypotheticals and all this other stuff. I tell you, no, this is what works. That when you get involved, you'll find this stuff out. That you take your own cause, which you know is the harm against you. When you finally realize and argue and research, you start finding all the laws that are being violated. And if it's a government agent, you turn that into an obligation. You find the duty in the law that was imposed upon him, and you turn that into a failure as a fiduciary breach. That you have to learn that sometimes you turn your attack. You may be trying to assert property rights, but when they come against you because they're now being derelict in their duty to recognize the actual law, they now have committed a theft by extortion by omission. As I've talked about this before, that I wanted to touch that real quickly, and I put that in the UCY chat a bit. I hope it was understandable. It's kind of a truncated discussion. It's very summary in the chat. That you find the way that the people in the office who are supposed to be there have certain laws that are supposed to be followed. When they don't, or they don't stop what would be a crime, they become the accessory to that crime. That act is unlawful. That's the breach. And so you turn the whole manner, as I was talking in the chat. We just did this, and I won't go into it too much, but to say, once we found out the officer admitted to not knowing the law, and that caused a harm, that the law existed, and he was going to ignore it. That was a fiduciary breach on who? His employer. So we turned the attention on the employer for failure to properly train. It's not even now about what they were there for. But this is how fluid you have to move your matters along, that we have the tools if we want to step up. It's there, folks, and it's there really summarily. We don't have to, I've come through, like I told you, decades to learn this stuff. But I'm here now. People like Ron are here. And as I was saying in the chat room, Ron and I sound very similar at what you end up having to do. We may not agree exactly on the importance of certain things and how we get there necessarily, although we agree a lot, I can tell you. But we do agree that you have to act locally and you have to act for your own sake, or maybe that in defense of others. And then I'm bringing to you that you're not stuck with the inaction of a government agent, that you can find a duty in law to have upheld. And if they fail to do that, that's your in. That I wanted to at least telegraph that to those of you that were listening into Ron's broadcast on UCY an hour ago. And it's kind of like talking through different broadcasters so we can kind of get this thing moved along. But it's more difficult because it's not like being on Oracle Broadcasting where I can talk with people that are on the same network like William Roberts. We can walk, like I said, shoulder to shoulder. He would bring you the encyclopedic knowledge that I told you behind the scenes. We talked. I said, well, how about if you do that, and I'll just apply when you talk about it. I'll listen in, and if there's something I can amplify or magnify upon, I'll bring the applicable knowledge, what you do with that information. And it was we didn't have any agreement. It wasn't like we pulled together. That's just what we kind of worked out, just because there was just so much to talk about. And how do we get listeners to understand there's a knowledge and then there's an application? And this is what I'm bringing continually. Your action is local, but it's local to a problem that you identify that's important to you. And now I'm going to move into what I started to talk about, was really why might we be here, not necessarily as an answer, just an observation. And I really don't know what to say. This ought to be so, if I can say, self-evident. The wrong here should have been so self-evident that it wasn't, is what I'm talking about. That we are suffering under in this today's day, the world today. United Airlines is sorry they forced a disabled man to crawl off flight to go to the bathroom. Now, I really hate reading this stuff. I hate reading because I don't like reading it, first of all. Secondly, I'm just wondering, didn't you get it? If you didn't get it all from the title, then that's our problem too, I guess. That my problem with this, and I don't even know what to say about it. I hear this stuff, I get so dejected. Where was it? I'll just say this. When was it? Was I so brought up so right by my mother and father, and my grandmother and my grandfather, and my uncles and my aunts? Was I brought up so right that that's a shock to me? That I was so cloistered by that upbringing that I just cannot understand that nobody else understands the problem with that title and what happened to that man. That we have to read it today. It's my problem with that story. And it's why I suspect, and I brought this up before, the Cain versus Abel thing, the innocent get killed for something that's not even their obligation because someone else with the obligation didn't want to take it. But this is just the ripple outward effect of this, and how essentially, I don't even know the words, I'll use this one that popped in my mind, how degenerate we've become as a society, that we would allow whatever to get in the way of somebody not getting aid in something so basic as having to go to the bathroom. That we watch this guy crawl down an aircraft aisleway, out the door, down the gangplanks, to go to the bathroom because there was nobody around to get this guy either a help, a shoulder to shoulder, let's lift you up and carry where you need to go, or because there was just not enough wheelchairs. When do we come where? I want to know, folks. Mark on the Beast at yahoo.com. It's not a shock because I just see the horror that people are against themselves. So it's not a horror no more, but I want to know because I want to delineate the time. When did we become a society that allowed this? Allowed that somebody would have to wait to relieve themselves and then not be serviced to the point that they drug themselves off the plane to go to the bathroom. And I want you to kind of think about that. Put yourself there in that man's body, what you're doing. And you got to the bathroom, and you got to climb to the bathroom, and then you got to climb on wherever you're going to climb on. Think about this, folks. When did we become a society that allowed that nonsense? And are we going to, as you hear this, are you going to be the society that continues to allow it? This is our problem. I don't know when it happened, folks. And I really am shocked. I'm clueless to when that happened. I am that cloistered. I do open doors for women. I'll open doors for men. I mean, if I'm in the better position or something's going on, I don't have a problem with slowing up a little bit. Helping out where I could, where I can, and being respectful that maybe that, there's this little idea that maybe someone wants to do it themselves. You have to pay attention. But where is it, folks? When did our society get to the point that we would allow this kind of behavior? And then we just get, I'm sorry, from a corporation, no less. When did it happen, folks? Because this may be the thing I'm missing. It may be the conflict of interest that Solomon from Brazil called into Freaker's Ball a week ago or so to say, we're looking at people with an internal conflict of interest. This is an internal failure in people. This story just maybe hits home on that as well in a slightly different area, but nonetheless, where did our care go, folks? I hear lots of time people talk about the empathy. Okay, it's a little new agey for me. What happened to the care? What happened to giving a damn, folks? And I'm not talking to anybody that would step up. You know that. I'm talking in the general. When did our society allow us to get here that we allowed ourselves to not help a disabled man, a woman, anybody, someone in need? And I suppose, because it's not going to be me that gives me my own answer here, because I'm stunned at the failure. I understand it, but I'm stunned by it. And I think I want to hold to that being stunned, because that's me inside. That is my mother and father. That is their mother and father. Saying, you care and you give a damn. And I know in English that's an inverted concept, giving a damn. Yeah, okay. That's what we do. Euphemisms. But you care. You care enough to at least help. When did we lose that? And I think where we identify that, we've understood where we failed and where that has to stop. And I don't know that that's the whole answer, but I think that's going to be the starting point. A starting point. And so I'm not going to read the article. I think the title tells us. I think our better nature is exposed for the fraud that we purport it to be, where this is allowed, where all we get is an apology. And this reflects on back, the ripple effect. It comes from people in the government, and they take responsibility. I find very interesting how very few people ask what that means. We all think about it, but no one asks, what's that mean to take responsibility? Another euphemism for not a darn thing, and you're not going to be able to force me to do anything. And we agree with that because we don't go and say, well, what you did was only legal. Even if you had the legal right, you didn't have the moral right to do what you did. And that's bringing the law. And that's what I'm saying earlier. I just said about you take a duty, it's legal duty on some officer who is accepted by his contract of employment or his oath of office, that there was a duty upon that entity, that public servant so-called, and the public means government. So it's a government servant, not yours. So let's get this really clear. Though they have an obligation, even as a corporation, to do certain things, that when they go against what their work contract is, that you can bring the law to bear upon them as an omission to do that law, and that's a felony theft by extortion if it's done under color. Now, I am speaking blindly into Canada here. I know this is for the United States. And so I would ask the Canuckistanians to look at their law to see if I'm not correct there. Maybe they have a different way they say it. And in some regards, I really appreciate the English monarchy's rule, because they've allowed some very explicit written documentation that's a lot clearer to understand than we have in America, that I would be using the heck out of in the same way. You find the duty, rule of law becomes an impediment, that's what you sue. That's what you challenge being the problem, that they had honored something that was in the rule of law that was actually a felony theft by extortion because it violated a different provision of care under their contract, and you were harmed. You got to have all these elements. Where did we go, folks? I'm asking one more time and I'll move on. I know. No one wants to hear this stuff. And I'm not really good at talking about it, to tell you the truth. I don't get on and rail and rant, and I guess what people want to hear. And that's because that's where everyone goes to listen. How someone can loudly declare and cry and put all the adjectives on a wrong, in a political sense, no less. That you lean in the political sense, and someone can loudly proclaim the harm and the violation and never explain what to do about it. That I want to call our attention to this one, and I want us to figure out how to stop this nonsense. See, what I talk about, I was just also talking about something we just did. We put before some people with oaths of office that there was a duty that they had to protect certain people. And it's from the organic documents. Didn't get too buried in all that. We talked specifically about a duty that they failed to do, and said that when that turned to that failure, that omission to act where the law imposed the duty, that failure causing a harm in a third party, an innocent third party, is a felony. That seemed to just get their attention. Now, they did the fancy pants dance trying to avoid that, and then it became invasion when I finally corralled it down. The point is that they took note. And I say note in the legal sense, the culpability sense. And this is what we have to start to learn, the thing that we weren't told. And I understand why, because if the natives don't figure out how to properly get restless, they win. As I said, knowledge may be one thing, properly applying it has been the key understanding. Where did we come to allow a disabled man to have to wait and then not get the help that he drags himself off an airplane to go to the bathroom? And then we get a corporate apology. I'm disgusted. And be almost to the point of beyond words as I say it, so I've got nothing else to say. We have to solve that problem. It's not even in me. I can't even think beyond that. That was not in me, taught in me, shown in me to be a better way to live. You take a little bit of time to care for people that may have a little bit of trouble. That we've lost that. I can't understand. It has to be one of the major problems. As I told the officials that we talked about, I said, I'm not telling you what to do and what to think. I'm offering you the information that's right out of the law so that you understand that there may be a better decision to make. I'm not making your decision. I'm giving you the information you don't believe is there that's clearly established. And I hope you use it to make a better decision. Where did we go, folks, that we don't make that better decision? Where did our compassion for each other go? And I didn't expect to speak this long. I'm just lost in this problem. I'm just, in a way, I can get beside myself. Oh, get back over here. Yeah, okay, now we're back. Over this kind of nonsense. Yak, blah, 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 about lots of other things, and we watch this news go right by. And this is not a singular incident. This is the one that was reported. And this lack of caring, this legalism that's come into the system, that it's okay for me to do if the attorney tells me so, Or if I don't have an accountability, I don't have to look at it. And there is no obligation for anybody to do this. But to allow it can't be a great and bright day in our society or our nation or our nations as people. That this disrespect turns up in another place. And I'm not even going to talk. I'm going to read it because I have to set the stage. And I'm not reading it because I'm thinking that we need to promote it. This is disrespectful as well, at a very high level as well. But I wanted to get to the punchline, and it's going to take me 2 reports to get there. And I'll read just the summary part to set it up, and then I'll move over to the next. But I want to have you listen for the punchline. And the punchline is another problem. It's a clue that feeds on this lack of care and this lack of responsibility that we the people have for ourselves, our own, and the purported government set in place for our benefit. Notwithstanding, it works for itself, and that can be dealt with. I just explained how to do that in the omission side of duty. And your persistence on that point. You don't want to focus off that point. They'll try to get you off the point. They tried yesterday. It didn't work. So application and persistence is all important. You can have the smallest amount of knowledge, but if it's the right knowledge and it's properly constrained and applied, it will be victorious. And here's another disgusting, disrespectful action that's gone on, so much so they tried to make it outlawed. And then a court came back in and said, well, the way you wrote that isn't quite right. And so I can't, justice doesn't allow me to convict this man for doing this. Because these words don't mean what you cited him for. Let me get back to the point. These things that they charge you for are notice to you. These laws are notice to you. And the judge is telling you, so you understand what's going on here, that the way this law was written did not give this guy who you charged for doing this the proper notice that he couldn't do against whom you focused the legislation on, against that type that he thought he would be doing it when he did the act that otherwise is illegal. It's just disgraceful. That I want you to understand here the specificity in language that's needed to use. When I tell you about terms being important, this is telling you this is important. And this is how you start addressing this monster that we're up against. These real humans in office, under color of authority called government, misusing that establishment. Existing so-called peeping Tom laws protect people from being photographed in dressing rooms and bathrooms when nude or partially nude, but the way the law is written, it does not protect clothed people in public areas, the court said. Quote, a female passenger on the MBTA trolley who is wearing a skirt, dress, or the like covering these parts of her body is not a person who is partially nude, no matter what is or is not underneath the skirt, by way of underwear or other clothing, the court said in its ruling. State law does not apply to photographing or videotaping or electronically surveilling persons who are fully clothed, and in particular does not reach the type of upskirting that the defendant is charged with attempting to accomplish on the MBTA. The judge said that while such actions should be illegal, they are not, given the way state law is written. Now, I'm not going to focus on the person or the state law problem, the statute stuff. I want to focus on what this judge said about the specificity in law. That even though you do a general review of what that law stated, how easily it was argued that what was stated could be, the hair could be split even finer. That you need to pay attention to this, but that the fact is that the law as legislated was not lawful against the conduct that the gentleman was charged for. And that brings up another matter, one of motion to dismiss, which I won't get into, just to let you all know when you're charged with these crimes, you move against them because they're not applicable, or they're not applicable in the way that they've been applied. That it took a judge to find that for himself, that this was not the charge that could be applied, even though the gentleman upskirt photographed a woman on a trolley. Next story goes on to say, and we're getting to the punchline, and I want now to preface this whole thing, is you look at this illusion they call life, you look at this facade they call government, or actually what has been come of what those people in the government have done to the establishment of government, which I've explained to you, I think, in the proper sense of the way property and law is situated, is a good thing. Why? Because we have disgusting, disrespectful, warmongering people in the world. We have Cains and we have Abels. And the law gave the Abels the ability to get some accountability. And if that was gone, I wouldn't be able to hold the same opinion, because then we'd all be brotherly love, sisterly love, kumbaya, unicorns and fairy dust. And sad is the day that we find out that it's not, and even worse, prison on earth. That the next story goes to say, and this illusion that we see is continued. And we get to the punchline right here in this story about the allowance and the continuance. When Massachusetts highest court ruled Wednesday that taking so-called upskirt photos of women in public was legal under existing law, lawmakers made a promise. Not for long. That proved true. In fact, it took just a day for a bill outlawing upskirting to sail through the Massachusetts legislature, a show of partisanship on an issue that had commanded national headlines. Talk about the natives getting restless. And that was my interjection. Next paragraph. The bill, passed Thursday, was sent to Governor Deval Patrick's desk for his signature that night, and was signed into law Friday morning, becoming effective immediately. Now, you listen for the punchline, because this is it right here. And this explains to you that whatever you see in the world is intended. And we go to the other side, the phrase we've heard, nothing happens by accident. Here's the phrase, the punchline, folks, to the facade of your existence around government, and those wielding the seat of decision within it, and those of you that vote them in continually to abuse you are about. It shows, he says, this governor says, upon the signature of one day, a bill to fix the hole that the judge found. It shows, I'm going to interject one more time. So now you see, actually, the judge delineating how they're going to put the noose around your neck even further and more clearly. Apparently it wasn't big enough. They're going to make it a little bit bigger. And I agree with at some level at the principle of this. But this is when you start finding out how the laws are made and what the system does to get the noose and the net as big as possible. And now you see how fast it can happen. And this is the reason. The governor tells you right here, the punchline. It shows that these legislature, it shows they can do it when they want to. The governor said of the swiftness of the legislative response. Boy, that's some transparency right there. You didn't see a whole other thing that he's talking about right there. But let me get to the point of what you did see. It shows that they can do it when they want to, is the punchline. When they want to, folks. When it serves both parties to want to. And so I want to do the reverse. You look at the world, the country, the United States of America, as it is, and you see all the ills in this nation. Has to be because these people in the seat of the power underneath this bipartisan dictatorship want it that way. It shows they can do it when they want to. Is the punchline to this joke you call government. It's actually not the government. It's the people in it that are using the cover to harm you using the cover, and the Bar Association is not removed from this, to make the nooses they put around your neck, or at least bind your hands and bind your feet and bind your little ones. They can do it when they want to. I wish I had a bell that I could hit that would make that phrase. Every time you see a problem that comes from legislation, not issuing out of people's baser nature anyway, they could do otherwise. If you find the problem, they could do otherwise as well when they want to. That when you look around and you see the financial system, the economic order collapsing, or actually it's not collapsing. It's an adjustable balloon they use to take away your rights and make you more submission to the servitude of that system. They use these as tools. When you see things continuing that don't make any sense to you, when you see the embrace of sustainable development, when you see the DOJ admitting that they went to the mayors and they're going to use the strong cities network through UN protocols in your local cities. They want to, folks. When you see Fast and Furious, that's what they want. Because they have the power to do whatever else they wanted to, and they didn't stop it. When they attack your properties, they want to do that. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't like people who have taken license by that way. That this has nothing to do with what's caring and what's moral or what's right. This has to do with what they want. And don't you remember what I read to you in the documents of A2030? They have, and the Bar Association conglomeration, and the political parties agreeing to the future we want. Now understand, that's not the future people need, so you got it in. But this is all about what they want. Not what you want, not your needs, what they want. And that want is your license to say you're not getting it. That I'm telling you, as long as you all remain crickets, they're going to get what they want. Why? Because what they want, they can do. And so, as despicable and disgusting as this upskirting thing nonsense is, and I really, folks, I wasn't even going to talk about it because I didn't want to make any promotion for it, but I started to read, I actually went back. There's something that kept calling me back to that story. And when I read that the punchline, I said, wow, this is one of those stories that gets people like myself not wanting to read it because it's disgusting in the first place. I don't need to read all that nonsense. And then they throw the tidbit of truth right in there. At least for me, made a big deal here. I wanted you to know about it. Because you, any of us, I mean, even myself, have to be reminded even, for as much as I see what I see, and as much as we do against what I see that's wrong, there's stuff I don't quite get sometimes. I have to be reminded to keep vigilant on this idea that when you're asking the question, is the guy that I'm having to talk with that's doing this, does he really know? Yes, folks, this is telling you, they get what they want. And that's our duty now to not let them take it and have it where it's not right. And this is the balance in the world, apparently, between those that want and those that need, and the power of the people to draw that line. On this concept of what they want, and that the legislature has the power to do it. And I know I'm not, for some of you that are anti-statist, I'm not getting over to the side about they don't have no right and this and that. I understand. I'm not going to even talk about all that. That's, as I've told you, sovereign isn't something you title yourself with. It's what you do. And I'm finding out when you start, as I explained it here, for what we've done, you start fulfilling the role of a sovereign, and a lot of this nonsense starts to clear up for you. That's what I'm talking about. So I don't talk about the things that seem to be implications of solutions handled when you do it correctly. I'm talking about how this thing is presented to us, that we tend to lull ourselves, and I'm saying I do this too. I certainly like to be lulled that there's a better world, but it just seems that I'm having to be shaken every day that it's really not. There's still more work to do. That what they want, the future we want, you saw in the UN documents, and how these the seats of decision right now that have the club they're beating you down with, those people have a document that says the future we want. What about the future you want or need, more importantly? See, through that want, your needs are going to be controlled into austerity. And I'm not going to get into all that aspect either. You can go anywhere to find that. You've heard me talk about it plenty of times. But what you see in the world is what someone wants that has the decision to put it there. And so I want to just touch this as well, the bickering between the two parties is false as well then, isn't it? As I've told you, the political parties, the United States of America, and I would say any government that has any country that has these governments that do this, the United States of America in particular, it can be likened in my mind to a candle. The political party of the Democrats is on one side, burning on one end, and the Republican Party is burning on the other. And it won't matter which burns faster, that candle will be consumed, fueling the power of the people that are feeding off of it. That what you see is what someone wants. And the higher the cover, in other words, if it goes national, these are the people in that level that want that to go nationally. This is the sustainable development problem. But when you see in the world a report, a study, and you see this, the line here that we're given to understand is really the truth. The punchline to this joke is they do as they want. And you see a story like this. The United States National Grain Reserves are apparently gone. I want that to sink in for people. The United States National Grain Reserves are apparently gone. I know, your mind has to be saying that can't be a good thing. I'm telling you, that's what they want. Because they knew how to do it to not have the grain reserves be gone before. That they can't certainly be thinking about you, your safety, and your food supply. United States National Grain Reserves are apparently gone. I'm saying one more time for those of you listening. Oh, only get food for 3 days. Oh, the preppers are anti-government terrorists. Well, if these people want to have no grain reserves, they can't certainly want good for you. From a preparedness standpoint, if the supply chain of agriculture distribution become interrupted, or the crop cycle itself, there is little or no buffer for Americans to put bread on the table or without significant costs. The United States government once held vast grain reserves in silos across the country. Today, our national grain reserves are apparently vanished primarily due to deregulated global markets and globalization and the 1996 abolishment of our national system of holding grain in reserve, which was gradually depleted until 2008. When the USDA decided to convert all of what was left into dollar equivalent. In other words, it's gone. There's more, again, I'm going to stop reading. That's enough of a setup. What they want is not good for you. These people who have the future they want and that are imposing this globalization, this policy, that are sitting in the seat of a decision of a government that had the obligation and duty to look out for its people. Apparently, I've not seen it, folks. I'm going to continue with the apparent. An apparent has both the fact of it, if you know it's apparent, right there I see it, or apparent in the we don't quite know, but there's a circumstantial evidence or at least probable cause to believe. Apparently, there's no reserves. Should really concern you. Who wanted that you did not have reserves in your nation? And let's get beyond it. Who cares? There's no reserves, you better have them. Then you got to protect them. So as I've been saying for a long time, I think it's really the writing's on the wall. You really have to get together with your neighbors. Hopefully you're not all a bunch of enemies, because it's easy to do in the politicized world that we're in the lack of caring world that we've now become. Could care less about a guy having to drag himself down the aisle of a plane to go to the bathroom. I'm just stunned. What else will we allow? And if that runs to your neighbors, we're all in a bunch of trouble. Hopefully you can work locally with your local folks. And you tell them about these things. I bring you folks. Like I tell you, I don't really bring you news. I think I'm bringing you evidence of a reality. Now it plays out a certain way sometimes in certain ways, and sometimes it doesn't. So this is the anomaly of the problem. But we can't let that lull ourselves into not doing anything. That I think this story is evidence. Even if it's not true, folks, it's telling you something. You have to ask, well, okay, it could be stored somewhere. Are you going to get it? You think the national oil reserve that is still being there, but they're also talking about selling, going to go to you when some supply line fails? See, it's hard to see this when we're living in the so-called lap of the luxury of supply, overbearing supply. Notwithstanding whether you can buy it, that's a whole other problem. That's irrelevant. You at least see the supply. You can't touch it. You can't buy it because it's too expensive now. But it's there. You see it's there. It's right just behind that window. It's gone. What? You're the money in that account? The digits we had in your digital bank account? Oh, it's gone. Now, you can't touch that loaf of bread. That's not for you. No, you can't get that gallon of gas. That's for the military and the corporations. U.S. national grain reserves are apparently gone, something that you better consider on your list of things to do. That's what they want, folks. Are you going to allow it to them? Now, you can't stop the National Grain Reserve policy. You can certainly reserve grain where you are. Whether that would take certainly privately for you, but do you get into a co-op? Do you do a bulk purchase and sell shares? Do we start doing this more tangible to ourselves? Do you crowdsource food? What do we do here, folks? I don't have all the answers, certainly. I'm focused on other things. I'm sure there's greater minds that can work on this than mine. I mean, I just see what I've seen. Do we allow the people who want to do what they're doing against us to do it, is, I think, part of the question. How, then, with the face of that, we're allowing ourselves to be a little less than caring to those that are lesser among us. I don't mean lesser, that gentleman may be very capable, but he certainly couldn't walk to go to the bathroom. He was lesser capable in that. That no one lended a hand. Kind of like we ask behind the woodshed, if you have something to donate, do it. I mean, send it to if you got money, send it to the servers. Send it to Grimner to keep the websites up. Send it to WT, Grammy Mary, to keep the servers going. Send it to UCY for Jules. To the broadcasters, the FMA and broadcasters that may carry my voice. That's what we're asking, if you can do that. For those of you who can't, that's fine. Jump in some other way. But we're going to have to do this for ourselves. Because apparently we are in a society, for those of us that care, we're in a society that doesn't care. And we're in a society that, because of that lack of caring, I suspect, contributes to getting people continuously into office that don't care either. Who are socio and psychopaths who get what they want. And you aren't part of that equation. Well, maybe you are. Maybe they are what you want. And boy, do we have the disgusting stories about that in the news. That I'm here again today to tell you that the evidence is in front of us and all these little reports to tell us we're not getting what we want and we're not getting what we need. I think if I was getting what I need, we've been diminishing the imperative of me sitting here to tell you every week, watch out, there's some people out there that are getting what they want at your expense. And in this country, I really, I have never known anywhere and never seen that the people, and I don't know if this is really just limited to America, once you free people, I don't think that there's actually people who, when they can be focused on a problem, wouldn't solve that for themselves better than someone else solving it for them, if they wanted to solve the problem. That there's nothing constraining our activity, nothing constraining us to do better. And I guess that's the other problem. We've chosen not to do better. We've chosen to be a society that we get to read the news today that some man who had to go to the bathroom on an airplane didn't get help for a long time, had to drag himself down the aisle, down the gangplank, over through the terminal, into a bathroom, hoist himself, I suppose he hoisted himself up on some place to relieve himself, and then drug himself back. That we're a society of people that allow that, I don't see much hope for us. And yet, we do have it in us. I'm here telling you, I'm not liking it. I don't really know what to do about that instance. But it certainly makes me look around where I'm at and commit more. That stuff isn't going to happen around me as best I can get it. I'm not going to watch somebody disrespect someone else either. I'm calling it out. And I think you all do too. I'm just saying that there's a whole society that doesn't. And that's our problem. Because this is a societal problem. This is societal things that are happening to us. We're being dealt with as a societies in a social mortgage that we is not of our asking and not of any reality more than the continued illusion of what we want. Someone says the future we want was what they said in the documentation. I read this stuff for a purpose. I'm somewhat astonished how consistently it keeps coming up in the news to fortify and confirm what I've told you, which at the time I can't point to any one thing. I just know it's on the horizon. It's coming. We got to take note of these, and it has to be part of our thought process. It has to be part of our action that we take. And for me, I for some reason, just the last few weeks, I look at the listenership, and it just keeps dropping down, and pretty soon there's going to be a couple of us. And I just wonder what that is. And I don't get feedback, and no one talks, and no one says what they're doing. Again, here's the real hardest part. I told you, I don't care if you stop listening. If you're going to take the knowledge hopefully you got from here, and you start applying it, now you're too busy to listen. Congratulations to you, and thank you very much. But I don't hear of your good work. And so I don't get much feedback about that. And so from this end, it looks kind of dire. And I turn around, and this week, I find out the ripple effect. Again and again, the words from people that have called into the broadcast or talk about this broadcast, and anybody else that does what we do behind the woodshed, that have done it on these networks. They're really not part of the media. They're just trying to let you know what the experience really is. And your part in it, if you choose to step up to take it. That the ripple effect of what we do locally is there. And without getting too detailed, I had a gentleman who was literally cut out of a process during a public meeting on purpose. And what was astonishing, and I'm telling you as a second-hand information to me, what was astonishing to hear was that where he was shut down, 20% of the audience spoke up in his stead exactly what he would have said, but divided over the 20% of the populace that was there at the meeting. That wasn't happening 6 months ago, folks. Except for this gentleman's insistence daily, wherever that he found himself a need to be, reminding people of what the law actually is, coming up, and this is what we do behind the scenes, coming up with how you put this law, this thing that was supposed to protect us in a society that professed to be able to protect us, for ourselves, to our benefit. The reminder that that's still out there eventually does start to reflect out. And with all I see, what I do behind the woodshed, and what I'm talking about, and maybe as little people as I'm speaking to, the tools I'm telling you we are using and doing are having an effect to the point that where we think we're just a few of us talking, there was quite a number of people that actually have been listening, and actually to the point of coming up and being able to rededicate these positions in their way to the very people that are trying to destroy it. Was pretty encouraging. And so while at one level I wish we had more, and I do wish we had more, because I know the more of us that do this and actually do get involved, that ripple effect, the waves of that ripple are going to turn into a tsunami of people power. I literally was shocked at first just to hear, because it was never heard before. I was just excited to hear the accuracy and power of people's words, and all they're doing is asserting that objective basis we call law that everybody else has been ignoring, and it just destroys the usurpers. I guess in some regard, I'm asking you all to do that because it's pretty empowering just to watch that happen. Does it solve everything overnight? No. It's been a long slog. I have to tell you that. But if you don't, it's going to, the future we want, not yours, theirs, is going to happen. It's happening. We're here. That day is here. So enough said. I can only say that we need all the help we can get as a people. But today, this caring thing, this failure of caring, made itself prominent. And I don't want to hear that as an excuse either. I see people lots in the chat. They'll talk about this. Oh yeah, that's the way it works. No. That's not the way it works. That's the way it's working. But that's not the way it works. How it works is that we care enough to give a damn, to be responsible, to not let the next guy violate somebody else. I don't care if they've got a costume. I don't care if they've just got an indifferent thought. I don't care if they could care less. Maybe there are those people that could care less. But that just makes it more work for each one of us if we want to hold the example of the world that we want to live in. And certainly being crickets can't be that example. Well, it is the example that it is, I guess, but it's not that example of the world that we, the people, want. And I'm not talking in the patriotic sense. I'm talking about us as people. That when we get rid of all this illusion we call government establishment, if we were to all be in the same square, that we would have to look at each other in the eye. How would you feel about knowing that someone was on an airplane having to drag himself out just to go to the bathroom because no one cared enough to have some help there for him? How about the apology? How sickening is that? I mean, where do you go? How low do you go to come back that you think an apology is even good enough? And then when you don't give one, how bad is that? I mean, these people, this is the problem. You're stuck in disgusting, reprehensible. We are in a place of lack of enough sufficient caring, I think, and I'm hoping that we can rise above. We have to cut through a lot of the nonsense and noise. We have to cut through a lot of those that would claim to care. And this is our real problem. There are people that claim to care that don't. And it's because they have a future they want, and they're using this lies or deception in order to win you over. Get you to grab a gun that they deny you anyway. They would deny to you on your own. But as long as you'll take that gun and put it to your head and pull the trigger, they'll give it to you. This is how insane it has become. That we have to be diligent and vigilant on our information. And we have to understand how to use it so that they don't come, these UN-carrying uncarings, these uncaring people that claim the mantle of caring, will come to deceive you, and they won't blink an eye over doing it. And so those of us that care are up against those that really don't, though they say they are. Because if they cared, they wouldn't disrespect you by claiming to be your representative or claiming to know better or making lies to convince you beyond your own initial consent. They wouldn't take away your choice. They wouldn't fabricate illusions to take away your choice. They wouldn't come under authority that appears to take away your choice. I'm describing everything that we are up against when I work off this broadcast and go work with miners or with the governments or with coordination or this consensus-based problem. These are all the tools they use. They have no right to do it, and I've identified that every technique they've used is a felony against people. To me, it's pretty cut and dry. It's pretty simple. And I could explain this to just about anybody, and I can point out exactly how this works. And until someone sits down to read it, they won't really notice how simple it really is. We really don't have all this oppression on us that way. What we have is either criminals before us or people that were ignorant, as I say, they're just ignorant of the black and white that's right there to be read. I don't walk to anybody and presume upon them or judge them. I don't care how nasty they look like they're out, and how much of a politician snake they might be. I attempt to not regard that in the first instance, and we work until their evasion of their duty becomes so great that it cannot. After every attempt to try and get them to stop evading their duty, they just won't. Then we explain the accountability to them. Is not that hard of a process for people to figure out, I don't think. It's just that, we have other things we want to excuse ourselves to do, and we think that's too hard to know. And I can guarantee you that generally it isn't known, but I'm a voice that has a part of the puzzle, I'm sure. And as I told the officials yesterday, I said, and I was talking about dealing with the county council. I said, we've been asked to offer our knowledge to county council. He's in the room. If he has any comment that is contrary to what I'm telling you, he's here to tell you that. And I turned to him and I said, do you hear, is anything I said contrary to the law or how it's applied? And the only answer he had for me was, I want the summary of the law you've presented in writing. And that was because they needed to amend a complaint that had been filed. So he had no outward objection. And I was just simply reading from the code that they are responsible to. The advantage I have is I, for the most part, I know where to look to pull that out. That's the only thing you all have to learn. Where to look to pull out where the duties are. Otherwise, there's no secret on how to deal with this. And we do it as cordial, certainly. There's got to be the same example of how we want to see our world in the future, but we have to act now in order to get there. And so there's really no antagonism necessarily, certainly not up front. And nothing between people. I told you, I don't judge people on what they don't know. We all don't know. But when someone takes on the mantle of authority that also takes on the obligation to be a protector, if you will, in other words, they're supposed to administer the law to keep the peace, and they shy from that. Now we have a problem. And the first instance is to remind them where that line is, and then if they are reticent to do that, we bring on the fiduciary breach and the potential liability, which I brought into the broadcast was exactly how you do that. You find the duty in law, you find the limitation in law that someone goes beyond, and you hit them with the omission to maintain the consistency with law, coming contrary to it. Omission is a fraud by omission, and it becomes a felony where it interferes with property rights or remedies. It doesn't do anything if none of those are affected, to show you exactly what the law is for, is to keep the peace and make accountability for private property rights, which are property, the appurtenances, and remedies. The law, which protects that. It's all about the capital R rights in the Declaration of Independence. The capital R rights was actually property. This is really what it's all about. It's why I've focused on this. Now, and I would, just to address Ron a bit, not really a lot, but a bit, that you can't own land. Well, look very carefully. That is technically true. What you get is the grant, and you shouldn't be purchasing. You should be granted the land granted to another by the sovereign that has the duty to protect the land, that we've all agreed is our societal government. You have a grant of agreed exclusive use and enjoyment. Exclusive possession and enjoyment. That's what your grant is. And that does not include unlawful issues, and typically for America, that is productive uses. And what you have is this agreed exclusivity of use over that section. So technically, yes, we're not actually buying the land itself. But what I now have termed, it's the soil, not really the land, because the land is a legal definition, but soil. So, but looked like in the constraint of the grant of exclusive possession and use or enjoyment, we have against all the world for the described land the ability to bring it into some productive nature. And it's supposed to be our determination. And there is no one, no it, no zit, no body that can come against that grant, that isn't violating their oath of office in the lawful construct, that you, when they do, you turn that into the obligation, the omission to maintain their obligation and duty, which is that theft by extortion. It's a felony. We get away from a violation, a misdemeanor immediately. That I think if we started talking in this sense, and we started to respond to each other in this sense, where property and there's a law to protect it and no officialness can come against it because there's no exclusive, I said exclusive possession. Your tenancies are not exclusive possession. They may have a right of an interest in that property, but not exclusive, and not as a grant against all comers, even the government. And so we have to delineate a little bit finer what we're talking about. And so if we delineate these things about us, that we can be conceived as property and it's exclusive to us, then I can start shedding a lot of the world. I'm not of the world. It's not of me, and it will be a felony trespass in order to attach me, unless I consent. And this is really what you're talking about when we're talking about someone coming against us and putting our name on something or giving us a status. I've talked to you about this before. If they delineate your name in a way that's not you, and you know it's a legal condition, they've committed a fraud and it's like a defamation. Now we hear the word from Ron today was plagiarism. He's like, that's absolutely right. One more word that says something wrong happened, and that's all your duty is to as a property owner, is to throw off the trespass and identify it. How is it a trespass? That's all you're doing. When we learn these things about property, and that we force the officials to recognize their authority is only to advance the protection of property, we start to learn how to put the government, the people in government, back into the place of the lawful government, notwithstanding its potential and its actual current corporate existence. You heard me talk about how we defeated that as well. I don't make a big issue about all that. I just say whatever they try to do, that's a fraud, a mischaracterization, it's a defamation, it's a slander, it's a plagiarism, it's a whatever. You can give it all kinds of names. It's just not law, and it's not right. Now, they whip out a document on you and say, well, this is where you agreed, and they connect it up to you by evidentially, then maybe you might have to agree to that then, but you don't have to agree to it in the first instance. I don't know of any case I've ever attached some document that happened around more than I was born to my parents that I've ever had to worry about. And it's never been an issue. And it's easy to get rid of the name they attach to you. If you needed to prove a negative, you can prove the non-existence of that thing. I told you, go to the state of Secretary of State. The corporation's easy to kill because they have to have the documentation to get you in. That's why I tell you your applications are all killer. It's the kill connection. It's the link. You file deeds instead of patent grants to the recorder. You've attached yourself as a tenant. You don't have property rights in the first instance. That's against all comers, even the government. That when you start looking at this thing and you start seeing the national reserves of grain aren't going down, and you know that the sustainable development is against the productive use of property and property possession itself, that means against you. And those in government are committing this fraud to not protect you, and you're reeling from that. To me, it's a lot more comfortable it's a bigger comfort to understand that's a dynamic we haven't solved yet, than to completely be destroyed by Patricia as it comes rolling through and flooding our lands and destroying our crops and taking down our trees and blowing the roofs off our house and destroying all our infrastructure. That's what we need in the world. This whirlwind this tempest called government, and it's not the government; it's the people in it. It was our obligation as people to stop. It was our obligation to look through the nonsense and beat down this thing. And part of the sustainable development was this tool that they've been using to bring on this new taxation plunder upon the world, as I've tied it together for you with IMF and the BRICS being a fraud as far as its independence and how this other economic construct is going on. And in fact, I just had another friend come onto it himself. He says he brought up the fact of being underneath this experimental servitude. And I said, go look at the United States Code Title 50. It's all there. The government's give itself license to hurt you. I reminded him if he didn't know, but I reminded him if he did know, and I told him if he didn't, go look at lethal injection that Clint Richardson done. In that movie, about 20 minutes in, he starts reading the code. I told him right before he presented that I said, listen, there's a code that tells you why this law is this way, why your people are getting hurt. The government gave itself license and its corporations license to hurt you, and no one said anything. Go look at the appendix. It's under an economic servitude. It's coming since 1917. Trading with the Enemy Act, you enemy combatant aliens. Title 12, 95A, underpins all of Title 50. They're protecting an economic order. And then I saw it reflected internationally. And so this is the economic order that they're putting on you that climate change is to speak to. Why? Because they need to get this carbon market going. It's another fabricated market. And yet the facts are here to go. Greenland blowing away all records for ice gain. Those of you that understand what it means that the National Grain Reserve is now empty, and then you hear this, you should be really starting to either move south. You heard migrators, you better start migrating, or you better understand what they're doing. As I told you, if we are in a solar decline, if the frequencies of energy are coming out of the sun are diminishing in a normal cycle, and they start doing solar radiation management to diminish the energy coming to the earth, they will hasten and quicken another ice age, and probably deepen it as well. That you might be seeing more of what I was telling you about many, many years ago, right here. Greenland is blowing away all records for ice gain this year. They have gained almost 200 billion tons of snow and ice over the past 2 months, which is more than 50% above normal. The surface of the ice gained more than 200 billion tons during the previous 12 months. I could read on, give you the graph. There it is, for those of you paying attention. I'm not saying this is the end of the world. I'm saying there are cycles, and we're maybe in a certain cycle that's more of a decline. And this whole plan was to diminish our capacity for energy. This whole plan was to tax those that you would use this energy, because energy is critical for people, how we prosper, how we get along, how we do things. And they figured us out, and that they're going to be able to kill us off by the manipulation of our needs, not by their wants. It's all, folks, this news is here to tell us it's not so cool, but it's going to get real cold. More ice in Greenland. Not so green, is it? Not so green. Why was it green, folks? So there was a better time, a better, warmer time. The earth may have been tilted. Who knows? I mean, the point is there was green on Greenland. Why it was called Greenland. It hasn't been green for all my knowledge, my life. How about you? Why is it called Greenland? Why is it white? Why is there more snow if we're going into a warmer period? They'll tell you that it's all part of this global warming. And yet, it isn't really warming, is it? 20 years of stall. Their models are all wrong. This is not about science. This is about a fraud. This is about using a seat of authority to diminish your abilities to act. That's a felony. That's a grand felony against humanity. And I just used the word, didn't I? Against the monsters. It's even a felony against the monsters, folks. That's how evil this becomes. Or is, actually. Greenland is no longer green, it's white, and it's growing. More evidence. Folks, more evidence to destroy this sustainable development imposition that's already in your towns and cities. We heard it, the Strong Cities Network. The DOJ just admitted it's a UN situation, a UN derived protocol. Keep your head in the behind a woodshed bucket of sand. You can do that. But don't blame me when you can't feel your butt no more because it got too cold. Can I predict it's gonna continue? No, absolutely not. That's what climate does. The Earth's climate is longer than me, bigger than me. But I do know one thing, folks. It includes the sun, something that the IPCC models don't. And I have a slightly different idea, though I don't know it a lot, and I certainly haven't been able to focus on it. I used to be a whole lot more capable to keep up with it, and this is before the internet. But I think we're living in a different model of reality than what science has given to us anyway. So that's why I tell you about the frequencies of the energy coming from the sun. Okay? That's been more helpful to me than anything I've ever heard from an expert scientist. Another one from the experts, but with the instruments now having to agree that, it's before the whole world to see that they have to at least start moving a little bit more consistent. Not only is Greenland becoming less green, if it has been. NASA study mass gains of Antarctic ice, mass gains of Antarctic ice sheet greater than losses. A NASA study says the increase of Antarctic snow accumulation that began 10,000 years ago, you anthropogenic anti-morphers, 10,000 years ago has nothing to do with the industrial age, folks. We've been in decline. You don't talk about long-term cycles that science is looking at a speck of time in its record. And I tell you, I look at this 10,000 years. That has to be based on ice analysis that we found out is prone to error, big time. Nevertheless, they have time sequences that they think that they're measuring, and over the time sequences of the science that's working today, they're agreeing that 10,000 years has passed, and they're going to apply this standard. 10,000 years ago, the snow accumulation began, and currently is adding enough ice to the continent to outweigh the increased losses from its thinning glaciers. The research challenges the conclusions of other studies, including the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's IPCC 2013 report, which says that Antarctica is overall losing land ice. And for the WT fans, that's where he has a place to live. I said, I live on Antarctica and get off my island. You experts. Get off my island. More ice than being lost. Folks, if you're paying attention, whether or not we come out of this next year is irrelevant. You better anticipate that this progression of 10,000 years is ongoing. Because the fact and reality does not care. It has no consideration for what the IPP says, what 10 million scientists would have to say. It's going to do what it does. The solar system is a little bit bigger. The universe is a little bit bigger than the biggest-headed moron in the world, or the biggest-headed group of morons. According to the new analysis on satellite data, the Antarctic ice sheet showed a net gain of 112 billion tons of ice a year from 1992 to 2001. That net gain slowed to 82 billions of ice between 2003 and 2008. We're essentially in agreement with other studies that show, folks, there's other evidence. Other studies that show an increase in ice discharge in the Antarctic Peninsula and the Thwaites and Pine Island region of the West Africa. I said, that's where I'm at. Get off my island, folks. So all y'all just trek out. I'm coming to see. I'm coming around the perimeter to come kick you out. You better not be there when I get there. A glaciologist, Jay Zwally of NASA, says, from the Goddard Space Center, and a lead author of the study, he says, our main disagreement of the East Antarctica and the interior of West Antarctica, there we see an ice gain that exceeds the losses in the other areas. His team measured small height changes over large areas as well, as the large changes observed on smaller areas. Finished talking about it, folks. Even if it balances out, there's nothing going on. There's nothing of such a global concern that they can use climate change as the thing to deceive you into giving more ability for them to steal from your life, to be more disgusting and disrespectful to you. More evidence here that the science cannot be settled, and the scientists are not scientists that say that it is. How often and long have I been saying this behind the woodshed? How often and long are others saying this? How often and long are the scientists that study it saying this? That this thing continues is what they want, folks. It's what they want. Why? Because we heard the governor say, well, when they want it, they get it. And they do it really fast. I hope that you didn't slip that one by you. They got it done within 24 hours. They get what they want. What you see is what they want. 16 times Obama said there would be no boots on the ground in Syria. They get what they want. Not what's right, not what's caring, not what works, what they want. Not what you need, not what you want, what they want. And you, those of you that participate, keep allowing it to be that mentality, that action, that psychopathy, that sociopathy, go in and do that to you. And those of us that aren't in that thing, not all of us again, but those of us that aren't in it, think that it's cool enough just to sit behind our keyboard or chat or have a complaint or whatever we do. Sit in a hole, whatever. I don't even know what we do. I'm so out of touch a lot of times. I don't even know anymore. I'm so out of touch with the world, I don't even know what's really going on, actually. And yet I'm engaged in it. That's the interesting dichotomy here. I don't know all what people aren't doing to not step up. But we're in that day that's not an excuse. Since 2013, President Obama has repeatedly vowed that there would be no boots on the ground in Syria, but White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest said that the president's decision Friday to send up to 50 Special Forces troops to Syria doesn't change the fundamental strategy. Quote, "This is an important thing for the American people to understand. The forces do not have a combat mission. The forces do not have a combat mission." This little report exposes the on and on. 13 times they've said there would be no boots on the ground. And here, they've got 50 soldiers going to Syria now, boots on the ground, but they're not in a combat mission. That's what they want. That you believe that there's not a combat mission. But the truth, out of the one face of Janus, they say there's no combat mission. The other face of combat of Janus, however, is talking out of the other corner of their mouth. U.S. spokesman in Iraq. Of course it's combat. U.S. troops in Iraq are in combat. That's what the Baghdad-based spokesman for the American-led anti-Islamic state coalition told reporters. Pentagon officials have hesitated to label a role the United States U.S. forces against the militants in Iraq and Syria as combat in the week since Army Master Sergeant Joshua L. Wheeler was killed in a firefight during a raid on an Islamic State prison compound outside of Hawija in Kirkuk province. But Army Colonel Steve Warren, the spokesman for Operation Inherent Resolve, was more direct Wednesday, speaking with reporters at the Pentagon through video conference. "We're in combat," Warren said, of the roughly 3,500 troops in Iraq. Of course it is. That's why we all carry guns. That's why we all get combat patches when we leave here. That's why we all receive imminent danger pay. So of course it's combat. In June, President Barack Obama, and just this week, announced he would send more troops into Iraq, heavily contested Anbar province. He emphasized American forces will not be returning to combat in Iraq. But the definition is if you're getting combat patches and you get imminent danger pay and you're carrying guns, I guess if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, shoots like a duck, it must be an armed duck on a combat mission. And so they get what they want. They don't care about you. They'll lie right to your face as if we needed to hear the military guy tell us this. The disrespect here is screaming louder than anything I could get loud about, I guess is the other thing here. I'm really not wired to be the next shock jock anti-media personality. I just want folks to know it's right here for us to grab up the evidence that these people are criminals. What more? I mean, we can talk endlessly about how wrong it is, about the lack of congressional mandate, the actual lawfulness of us all. We're so far beyond the law, and because there's no accountability. That we are the accountability, no matter how much threat we get when we start to become that accountability. And I'm responding a bit to Ron, although I don't like to do that too much because he's not here to talk and we don't have the dialogue and I'm not on Skype and we can't do this kind of thing. But I want to give at least some information that they sicked the dogs on him for his advocacy. And he knows his stuff enough to lay it out. All I'm offering is how you implement all that knowledge. If you listen to what's happening to him, you know this is not risk-free. And you know that there's a way to deal with it as well. That we have something to deal with here, even if it's the president and they're fighting over in the Middle East. As I tell you, that's just a reflection. There's a mirror in the Middle East reflecting on the battlefield America. That I don't think that Americans, those of us in the United States of America, not the Canadians and the Mexicans, or those in South America. How about Central America, the Americans? No, the United States of Americans appreciate. We are disgusting. We are disrespectful. I told you a little example of what we do in our most magnanimous, helpful and beneficial. We'll go force some local people in a country to grow corn along the river early in the year, and then be surprised when the elephant migration comes through to stomp it all in the ground and steal it. Never thought to go ask them. No. But we get the response. Apparently the migration of elephants came through the corn in Iraq, because Iraq says, we didn't ask for the United States ground operations. Ground operations, I guess they're confirming it's combat, aren't they? For as much as the liar-in-chief will deny it. Oh, excuse me, he didn't. His spokesman did. Folks, it's that we sit back on this is really, it just stuns me. I get lost in that. All of a sudden, I should be talking, I guess, but how much more information do we really need about all this? Vladimir Putin accuses U.S. of backing terrorism in the Middle East. Was a story a long while back. I haven't got to the tabs because this other important information's come up. But calling it out. You think maybe that's why Iraq didn't want the United States to have operations, because they are the terrorists? You know, I hear this still continuing term of proxy war. No, the Russians are they are directly addressing terrorists. They're not there's not a moderate terrorist or a terrorist light, or there's not a terrorist difficult or heavy or less fat or no sugar. No. Russia says you're against the government of Syria by the Syrian definition, the government of Syria's definition, that's democratically elected by its people, no matter how spread out they are now. And we are working with them by their definition to counter all attacks from whatever sector, by whatever name, as terrorism. But Putin is saying that the United States is backing the terrorism. Okay. more confirmation that we are a disgusting, disrespectful people. To continue to allow those in the seats of decision of this government to not face the wrath of the people. Is it because we're just a disgusting people? We'll allow someone to crawl down, a disabled man to crawl down the aisle of an airliner. Remember, I don't know if you appreciate, you got to read that story. He sat there for 20, 30, 40 minutes, 40 minutes while he had to go. He couldn't wait no more. They were going to let him wait a little longer. So Iraq don't want us. They didn't invite us. The natives in Africa they thought the corn was cool, but they didn't know why they were going to work so hard to plant the stuff and water it. They knew the migration of elephants was coming. These are probably the same elephants that were smart enough in Banda Aceh to run to the hills that the people didn't have a clue and died in the tsunami. No respect for the nature of things. No respect for the people living in a place. That if we can believe this story, and I just did a word to the wise, I can't qualify all this one, but whistleblower, so-called whistleblower, 33,000 U.S. troops to be sacrificed to start World War III. I'm not so much into World War III. I think we're beyond that. We're into the whatever the world war is. I think it was all proclaimed. It's multidimensional. They're telling us what it is. I don't think we're seeing that. It's not. They're focusing us on battle. That's not the only thing that's going on. That's the war against people of all nations. But there's someone coming out that's saying that 3,000 troops are slated. This is a plan. 3,000 troops are going to be sent to Syria to support Syrian rebels, so-called, and to die at the hands of Russian troops who are fighting ISIS. Again, folks, I looked at this. This is plausible. They sacrificed 3,000 people at 9/11. See, they don't care. What the means justify the ends. And I don't know. I think it's beyond me to even figure out what those ends are. I just call it concentrated evil. It's actually evil. So someone said before it was an evil elite. And I said, no, it's evil elite is what they said. I said, no, just move the E between the evil and elite. Move the E to the word evil to make evil. And it's actually what we're dealing with here. 3,000 troops dying as a plan at the hand of man's plan. That's evil light. I'm trying to identify, there's a deeper evil here. All right? It's not yet showed up. It's coming. But these people are willing, if this is true, to exterminate, destroy, kill, execute 3,000 troops who may actually, because they agree, may deserve to die. I don't know. We keep doing this disgusting thing to other people. Maybe that's just retribution, and the people that are controlling these troops don't care that that's exactly what they get. We're dealing with some despicable people in a society that doesn't see a real difficult problem with some disabled man having to crawl just to go to the bathroom. And that can't be the most heinous thing that's ever gone on. You understand that? I'm not talking, we can go on and on about the heinousness of things that go on with the people of the nation of the United States. What people are allowed to be considered, to be grown into, forced into, that they have to deal with. Are you want to be one of the people that agrees to go to war that has been with the 3,000 that's going to be sacrificed, like the 9/11 people in the buildings when the towers were vaporized? However it was done. Folks, I told you this is evidence they went and done it. These people are going to went and done whatever they want to went and done. Why? Because the government, someone in the government said that you get what you want when you want it, and you get together on what you want, you get it. And you get it fast. What is these stories are telling us of a sickness, I think. That those of us that hope that we're not sick, I'm sure we all have a bit of insanity somehow. But if most of us were actually raised up like my mother and father raised me, to have this, there is this care in there. Maybe It's not, maybe it's been a little displaced. Maybe I don't live in the same neighborhood that was a family neighborhood. Maybe I don't live around people that makes the neighborhood family anymore. Maybe for a long time. But I have a care of people, those that I choose to deal with, or that really I'm fortunate to deal with them because I'm so focused that I don't really get out much, if you will. We're behind the woodshed. We're on a mission. We don't get a patch. We don't get hazard pay. So apparently we're not in a battle. Apparently that's the counter mark about that. We're not in a war, is what we're kind of explaining. I'm telling you that we are. So that's my insanity, right? I'm a lunatic. That when I see these psychopaths able to kill 3,000 people, and I told you why I believe part of that is because the government knew the buildings were under the plan from the court case way years before that the towers were susceptible. The CIA and the FBI was feeding the terrorists so-called information to how to do that long before. That it wasn't a question to me that it was done with box cutters and airplanes. It was just that it got done. And nary a word against it. Did you see? Did you see how we responded as a society? So, for those of everyone paying attention, we hear the drumbeat for a nuclear war, and my mind is telling me, yeah, that's always the possibility. I'm glad that Russia is who it is right now, because that's a real possibility. But that's going to be a provocation that may be well deserved, that we, the people, have a voice to stop. The more I listen around the world with the internet, the more I understand those people across the world don't blame people in America. They're actually starting to feel sorry for us. Think about that. The wraps off. The emperor the global emperor wears no clothes now, folks. Russia called the bluff. United States is a pretty sad joke. And I guess my point about that is, in a way, I don't like that on a global stage, but that means that your local government thinks you're a joke. You're a joke. And partly because it's moved into this more administrative thing that the people know that are in the office are trained how to deal with you. And we haven't gotten together to figure out how to counter that. Why I come to the broadcast. I hope, maybe it's not tangible to any specific thing, but I'm giving you what our experience is telling us, what my research shows, what I decide to do and what we do. I say we because I do some of my own, but I also work with people that are working. I give information that what I do gets worked through what they do to bring about the changes at a distance, if I can say it that way. Things that I may not be able to do directly. I can get done through people that found it in them to do what they do. That allows for something that by ourselves we couldn't do. In other words, that's the synergistic point of working with somebody. That I ask you, if you can't find something yourself, find someone you can really work with well. Truly answer your power and then your deficits, and then go find the complement. We have these whistleblowers, so-called, that might tell us, and you got to be careful about them. But if this is credible, it's an so-called ex-CIA assassin. There can be anybody in the stage play that could be doing any of this now. But a word to the wise really is what I'm seeing. We have people who get what they want. We have people that are disgusting and don't care. We have a society that seems to have bought into that as being okay. I'm talking in general. For those of you, and I probably lose people who are tuning out at times, or don't listen, or don't come back. Don't make it so private to you. I'm not talking to those of us that are doing something. I'm talking about to us that are doing something to explain what I'm seeing as difficulties in what we're up against in addressing. Not that it's not addressable, but that we have to know it's there. The things that kind of wear on us as the battle goes on. Trying to bring insight on how we either avoid it or deal with it, move around it, or whatever the answer ends up being for that obstruction, that mine being laid in our minds against this thing that ends up really being an illusion, which is actually some man or woman controlling to your detriment. Because it became a place where they get what they want, and it doesn't matter what you say. And that happened because of crickets. Not a field of dreams, it's a field of crickets. And until that field starts to move, we're going to get what they want. Let's put it that way. So we have a dynamic that gets built up. We talked about before the climate change. You see the ice building. Be careful, as I told you, it might be indicative of a natural ice age, and we predicted that some of that. It was told to us. See, this is being hidden as well. Remember, I told you it happened in the 70s. They told us it was that the actual data was saying that it looked like it was going into an ice age. And then right after that, 1970 hit. We got that beautiful picture they tell us of the Earth and from the moon flights and the moon landing in 1970. They're using the picture to say how spaceship Earth, and I give credit to Ron again. I think it's his website. He talks about this little video you need to watch. But I was looking at that video. See, I've seen that video talking about spaceship Earth. That was when they were moving in the Earth Charter. In the 70s, that came after the 70s when they were trying to make the Earth Charter. They used a nice picture of the Earth. This is the satellite. This is the spaceship that you live on. We got to take care of that. That's where the seed was planted in the 70s. That they've used this fraud of this condition. Not that the fact that we may live on this little satellite and maybe our spaceship and all that. That's not what I'm denying. That there was a cause that man was causing himself that other men had the solution for. Is the fraud. That the mechanisms are then put into place and the rationale happens, that we're seeing already evidence of what really happens within corporations to try and avoid the constraints that are artificially placed that they agreed to so they can profit. That this is older news, as I'm saying, I'm getting down my tabs, but important things that come out. That if they're not, as we see the vaccine industry has an immunity, corporations will still still do what they can for the bottom line. That we have this report coming out about Volkswagen, that Volkswagen emissions fraud scandal, proprietary software is the real villain. I thought here was very important, which brought me back to this discussion, not really about this Volkswagen issue, that they had a sensor. Essentially a switch in the tailpipe that when a sensor probe was put in to see the emissions, air emissions, to try and qualify the standards, that the switch would tell the computer to run the engine differently. Was how they did it through software. Now remember, I want to remind you about what happened. Remember, Google and GM came out and said, because we own that software, you can't touch it, and you're essentially a slave to whatever we do. That we essentially own that vehicle, that property. It's not yours. That this comes to highlight for me right here, this proprietary software. Whatever it is that Volkswagen did and the reasons why those are a great analysis because they're doing them because of these stringent standards that are brought on by this diktat, this global diktat, that it occurred to me also, even with them running differently, pollution seems to be clearing up anyway. That was a problem in the 70s. It was truly a problem. You see that in unrestrained production centers like China. So again, we're not so nice to each other, and so there is somehow a need to constrain what industry does, what corporations do, and it isn't maybe right. But you see that the corporations worked this out, and they did it through their proprietary software, which is now being outed as the real villain, which is really just the company saying that they're going to use that software. That I wanted to also focus you that this software was the reason why these companies are claiming that you'll never own these products they sell to you with these electronic computer systems with software in them. You're seeing your life, and agreeably, your life is coming into a tenancy. Nothing will be yours. I told you they will remove private property, and there's no need for due process or the law, is there? See, these people bringing on what they say, what the future we want to put it in technology that they control and possess to take away your property. I've identified this in what they do against property law, against property possessors for production. That they have claimed, it's admitted, that this property law, this required due process, is an encumbrance to them. It's an obstruction to the fulfillment of their goals, the completion of their mission, which completely highlighted my observation that property and law are the antithesis to their objective. They admitted the due process to protect the property is an obstruction. And a rationale was that, as I saw some papers being written by their gurus, I said the move is on to have the Bar Association remove the recognition of property in a thing, and then they don't have to recognize the due process. That they've figured that out. That's where you hear about this reflexive law nonsense. They've figured out a way to take out the property aspect, put you in a so-called tenancy, or not having a property at all, handing it over to their corporations, who take advantage wherever they can. That I pointed out a long time ago, be careful of this argument that the companies are saying that their software actually then possesses the entire thing that it operates by. That we see this little story, which is, I wasn't really interested in the Volkswagen nonsense. I mean, it's just what they did. I looked around. I haven't seen that those cars are really causing us any real problem. The scandal of emissions is all based on a fraud of emission standards as well. At some point, I don't even know where to begin with the problem. So I end by saying, well, have I been behind one of them cars and seen smoke and soot and all that? Well, no, they've done a pretty good job of all that. Could it be done better? Well, apparently, but I don't know if that's the truth either. That we're looking at, for me, the fraud scandal proprietary software being the villain, looked to me to be forcing the agenda. Apparently Volkswagen wasn't in on it so well, that there was some immunity written in them that they can get. And they took advantage where they could. I'm going to suggest to you that it hasn't been found out that all companies that use computers to run their cars run on their model and design for the software to be written. That they do things in the system, in the injection systems, where they place the fuel loading, where they allow the oxygen, how much they put in and when. I don't know if you know this, they'll inject fuel after or so much that it can't be combusted so that they have some left over to run the catalytic converter. That's a design software decision. It wastes fuel and you don't know it, just for these emission controls. They are theories and models of detonation that they use, and all these companies do it. They change also the constituents to things that aren't being measured. that I thought this story is really more telling on what corporations will do to try and keep ahead of regulations that are really nonsense to begin with, but everyone puts on the charade that they have to, and they do it through proprietary matters. Industry really appears to be needing regulation. But there's a reason for that, because they changed the laws to make corporations not be holding to their purpose, their short purpose. They gave them life beyond. The undead can't die. They've given them undead allowance as people rights. Whose only obligation is to what? The government's done this. To what? The bottom line. And I've told you that was initially just an economic bottom line. Whatever makes the best profit. But now they have this fabricated triple bottom line. It's actually quadruple when you look at it. And this isn't the global governance imposition. That you're watching these things come along. As I've told you, watch out the labeling of GMOs. You're impliedly agreeing to the GMO, and the industrial lawyer who wrote the law that you didn't know. I identified this behind the woodshed when it happened. And I did it by someone else actually seeing the same thing. And I was just surprised and excited to see someone else could read through the nonsense as well. And I don't remember, I apologize not knowing her name. She found it out. I said, I'll use this as an opportunity to expose this. That the corporate lawyers gave the loopholes for everything that existed up until that time and other things to allow the big guys to get through and the little mom and pops not to be able to. That industry is about the bottom line, and the government allows those restrictions out there. That I told you some of the byproducts, so like we talk about air pollution, emission controls, you know, they seem to be a big scandal. That certainly didn't seem to be a big scandal against companies like Monsanto and their air pollution of pollen, a killer pollen that would go into a neighboring farmer's of crops and eliminate his crop, his pure strain, and then give Monsanto the advantage of taking that crop without paying for it. And ruining the guy's land. That it comes out. Organic farmers suffer 77-fold increase in lost revenue from GMO contamination in last three years. That I tell you, on the side of Volkswagen, where they're worried about these emissions, they haven't been worried about the emissions from Monsanto taking out organic farmers' land by overspray or pollen. To show you that this is what they want. One company apparently violated their ability to regulate them and didn't have the inside track. On the other hand, Monsanto has the inside track, and they're given carte blanche license to do about anything, and the tally's coming up. Organic farmers are now suffering a 77-fold increase in lost revenue from GMO contamination. Because your courts never stopped looking at property rights as a sanctity, and they allowed the bottom line to win. That's just another form of felony. It's a felony, it's a deprivation of rights and property under color of authority, isn't it? And that just needs to be called out, and I suggest that we did, at least to set the record for sure, in 2003 when we sued the Bar Association about the implementation of this sustainable development that will work in favor of multinationals at the expense of private property, and they didn't answer. Default judgment to our credit. It predicts this outcome. Now we have the harms. We have documentable harms now. That if people were to track back how that happened and find the failure in this process, they'll be able to use that failure in order to win. As I was telling you before, sometimes you can't go directly at your objective. You have to go through a few more different steps and maybe even a different theory in order to get there. This story was a couple of proofs. One, the proof of damage, and the proof that when you don't constrain property rights to property and constrain it to within the property, we start having damage. It's a trespass on the rest of society. Tied into the fact that government allows it, that's what they want. That's what these people you vote into office want. It doesn't matter whether they're a Republican Party or a Democratic Party. And I hesitate because I really don't focus on these. They are so unreal that I don't even remember some of their names sometimes. But I have to still discuss it, so I have to remember it, get back to it, find their name. You're voting into office the flames that are upon the candle called the United States of America. They utilize the aiders and abettors in the Bar Association. This is I'm telling you, all beyond opinion, folks. If you didn't see it in the documentation, I now had, if I had a doubt before, I don't at all. How could I have a doubt to sue the Bar Association and have them not answer? That they were part and parcel. The political parties, how could we sue them in the same case and have them not answer? Unless we were sure. And then they conceded the point. Again, the heavy price tag of GMO contamination. Last week, the United States Department of Agriculture released the newest data on the organic sector, featuring results of a survey of organic farmers conducted earlier this year. The survey results confirmed organic farmers have been saying what organic farmers have been saying in recent years. While overall organic sales went up, the number of organic farms in the United States went down. It's a pattern that's sadly familiar in the world of conventional agriculture and the one that's sparking serious discussion in the organic community. That there are less private organic farms is the plan. Multinational monopoly is the plan. That's what they want, folks. The organic farmers now have the evidence, and those of you that want to support organic have the evidence to start going after these people. Don't let them take what they want. That's for you to stop, because they are going to steal what they can. They're criminals. The people in a government are criminals. Until we come to terms with that, and I'm really flabbergasted when I see someone having to crawl down the aisle of an airplane to go to the bathroom because he's just disabled and no one helps him. I really wonder, do we have the internal respect and care for ourselves in order to get this done? Some of us are here, I hope. Hope the listeners that stick around here do it, but the one that go run away, that's the one we got to be careful of. That internal conflict, that maybe they are those types of people, and there's a lot of them out there. And yet I still look around, and the ripple effect of response to the truth and the law, the things that I see anti-statists denounce, the things that I see people, the libertarian freedom fighters, don't understand by their own policy that they're a servant in a servitude that they don't want to get out of. The thing that seems to be the millstone around our neck as a free people has not been thrown off. That ring in our nose, I tell you to remove. Don't be the accessory to the crimes against us. Telling you that we have two jobs to do. One is remove the ring, and number two, stop the oppression. We have the evidence of the harms now. We know the plan is that there's evidence that the plan is being fulfilled. Monsatans are rising, and the little organic farmers, maybe they're big organic farmers, I don't know. The smaller guys that don't have the wherewithal are diminishing. If you want to store grain, you better worry about the guy who starts growing it. If you think the nation don't care about the excess grain, you can guarantee they don't care about the little guy growing the right food, whether or not they store it. And you can know that if that's what they want, they got it, and they don't want better. Why? Because if they want it, the governor over there in the other story says they'll get it, and they'll get it fast. Folks, am I clear enough today about what the problem is and where it is? We're the accessory to the crime against us, putting people into office who have the power to do what they want. It should be what the people need, but instead it's what they want. And we've identified these entities as being corrupt, amoral at best, immoral at worst, and at worse than that, evil light. Not not evil elite, evil light. That really, I'm repeating myself, I think, every week now forever. We have something to do, and it's the war against us will run us down if we don't resist it. It's already run us down quite a bit. But I somehow believe, and I've seen this work. However downbeat we are, there's not much. We have the silver bullets if we would just stand up and use them. We're going to have to shoot a lot of them. There's a lot of targets out there. But the people in unified action have the silver bullets. It's called their law, properly applied. No excuse, perseverance, understand the techniques that are being used against you to try and have them demur or to evade their duties. That when I just did it yesterday, when you corral them within the constraints of a finite discussion, they will eventually have to answer to that. And if you do it right, you don't really trap them as the animal they end up being. You actually talk with them in the example that allows you to come to some terms about how that's going to eventuate. Because I'm able to identify their felons in the office doesn't mean that I actually accuse them of it. I just identified the fact that, how about if we have you avoid that? Wouldn't you feel benefit of giving another chance, folks? So I think we have to give that to everybody. It's only in the most heinous instance that we have to shut it down. Or when someone's really being harmed immediately, and I mean in a real physical way. But if we don't care about someone has to drag himself down an aisle of an airplane to go to the bathroom. We're living in that society. What else don't we care about? And I'm sad. I think about that. I get sad inside. What else is out there? I really am in a cloistered area behind the Woodshed. I don't see how heinous. I can only imagine, and I don't know if I can imagine how heinous it really is. We have evidence of how heinous it really is. Evil light is running the world. Concentrated evil is behind it, right behind it, on the verge. It's only up to us to stop it. Or we're going to get the future they want, because they said that. We get the future, this is the future we want. I read you that documentation. This is not hyperbole, conjecture. These people are organized. This is an organized offensive against the people. Readily demonstrable as a felony. At least, it's treason for people inside the government who take oath to protect it, the actual obligations. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope that was helpful today. Just look for something, folks. The evidence is all around. I told you it's a target-rich environment. Please help the people that are donating their time and their services and their money to run the servers and the websites. Grimner at Grimner at Real Liberty Media is over. It does the broadcaster information and has a website that you can select many different links for information. And you have UCY Jules. Then you have Grammy Mary and World Truth, a social network. You can contribute your time there. You can get engaged. I'm kind of inept about it all, but I'm around, but I don't really know that much about it. But some people find great utility in it. That's where the servers come. If you can donate there. If you can't have no money, don't worry about it. We have time. You got contribution. Maybe you got a microphone. Maybe you have a word in your mouth. Maybe that needs to be told to people. I apparently don't have the charisma to get people to listen and then to go act. Maybe you do. Thank you for tuning in again. Be careful, everybody. Don't get lost in the dark early this week and going on into winter. We'll talk to you later. Take care.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.